Hey, I know it's been a while. Um, you know, I've been dealing with a lot of stress. Stress is a killer with brain injuries. It can manifest in so many different ways. It's not even funny. And depending on where you're injured, it really can destroy you. Even so, even without injury, um, that limbic system is huge for emotions and where stress lies and everything. And if say you have something like inflammation, say you have something like other things you're dealing with, even other diagnosis, that can be affected medication wise, food wise, just your ability to accept stress and deal with it and not own it, because that is a very difficult thing depending on your circumstances, depending if you have somebody to talk to, depending if you're alone or if you have another sounding board that you can talk it out. But if you're talking it out and say it's with another person that's broken, it can be just as bad, because you could take the advice of someone else and still it may not apply to your particular circumstance, your particular personality, even. And that's a scary thing. I mean, we have to be our own doctors medically sometimes, but mental health wise too. And even if you go and you talk it out with a doctor, it's still, how are you going to apply it to your own life? So you have to basically take your own life, take you, and how do you deal with things like normally? And how can you modify the instruction, or if you read something, how do you apply it to your particular life? Because there's no cookie cutter cutout to resolve things, because we're all individuals. So how can we say there's one formula for everybody? Because we're all different. So our makeups are different. Our DNA is different. So understanding how your body's working is going to dictate how you're going to perceive things. I mean, I can look at something as stressful and break down, and someone else could look at it as no big deal and not break down. So it depends also on your circumstances, on where you live, on how you perceive things. That's going to make you anyway. So if you haven't let go of the past and it keeps whacking in the face in all different ways, you have to reevaluate. I can't, it's going to be odd to say this, but it was almost like a godsend to have my brain injuries, because it made me stop. It made me look at me. It made me think. It made me try to figure out the best way to deal with life. But with the extra injuries, it doesn't turn out to be black and white. But even if you're not injured and you say had a really rotten time at a devastating situation, or running into things that keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you, to try to dig out and become a better person, to become like that person, like this person, and use that as an example, it's very difficult, because you want that, but to change yourself into that, those are the steps that take time. Like I said, even dissecting yourself helps you to find what works for you. Even if you look at your job, what works for me to resolve these problems? And if I was talking to somebody else, what would I say? That's a big thing also, because if you know what you'd say to somebody else, then you know you better than anybody else. So what would you say to yourself? If you were sitting and someone was dealing with this and you're kind of blinded to what to do, you write it out and you say, okay, this is someone else telling me. What do you do? What would I do? Well, this is what steps I would take to tell somebody to resolve it. Well, then, why can't you look at those steps and resolve it? Taking yourself out of the equation, it's gold. Anybody out of the equation looking into it on someone else's behalf. You know, when you're separated, when you don't have your heart into it, when you don't have your life into it, you respond different. So why can't we take problems and look at them and respond to them in that way? Doesn't that make sense? So everybody's running the meds. Everybody's running everybody else, but we're not concentrating on ourselves. And to think that changing your physical appearance by, say, cosmetic surgeries, or by taking this pill because you have so much anxiety, well, the medication's an escape. It's not going to help you resolve anything. And changing your physical appearance is almost like a mask. You're hiding. But have you resolved what the problem was in the first place that you wanted to run and hide? Is it just a beauty improvement? That's one thing. And you feel better about yourself and self-esteem. But if it's based on somebody else, something else, that is a gray area. Because then, are you still going to have that same mindset and that same problem? It's not going to go away until you do something about it. Other people could try to tell you until you believe it and you actually put it into work. You, like a lot of people, could be in therapy for 20 years and still not have an answer when it's right there. Because we miss that. Because you have to stop and think and look and believe that you're going to get out of it. It's been a long road to try to learn that, but I've learned that. So if you do take everything apart, put it back together and figure it out, you can get through anything. And when we lose somebody, yeah, they're gone. But depending on what you believe, that person's in your heart. That person's still there. And thinking about what they used to say to you, if they had an impact, it's huge. You can still have them living in your heart and living with you without having them physically here. When you're divorced, absolutely, it's lonely. I understand that. But you lose yourself sometimes when you get married. Or circumstances happen beyond your control. And sure, once you have that security gone, what do? Well, you have the opportunity to look at you without somebody else and try to piece things back together for your life like it was before. Yeah, things change, you lose things. It devastates you financially, it devastates you just personally, friends all change, and yes, you lose a lot. But if you have the opportunity to gain you, and then look back, to be with somebody, say that you guys weren't compatible and you realize that after how many years, it's something more than still losing yourself, still being miserable, and holding on to something that doesn't have any life anymore. Because both of you have to work together. Marriage is not just we're going to get married. You get married and everything's hunky-dory. It's two people now making a life work compared to one. So you can't make all the decisions. You can't do all that kind of stuff because the other person is going to get lost. You have to work together. So there are so many things to look at, so many things to weigh out. The number one thing is to have yourself in a good place so you can stand and speak your heart and not be afraid that you're going to offend somebody else, that you're going to hurt somebody else. We all need to find our voice. Circumstances like being disabled is very hard to find your voice because there's so much against you. there's so many people that look at you not as a human, but just as a person taking up space. And then the assumptions are, oh, well, you're on assistance. You have this. You have that. Well, I'm not on assistance. Yes, I'm disabled. Yes, I'm on disability. But I put in the hours to work to achieve what I could achieve. So I'm lucky in that I'm not so impoverished, but I'm under the poverty level still. I mean, that's life. It's working with what you have. And yes, I do have alimony. Thank God I have alimony. So there's a certain scale, a certain way out, but then I got this autoimmune. So it kind of destroys that way out, that certain something. So now it's just a matter of figuring out what works for me, figuring out that budget. Hey, if you're going to get somebody to help you budget, that's fantastic. But if you can't, then it's sitting down, putting everything out exactly. What do you spend on food? What do you spend on utilities? Food, unfortunately, for an autoimmune, it could do fresh or organic or however else you're going to work it, because I can't even do everything organic because it's the affordability. And I go through fresh food pretty quick or it'll spoil. So you need to really look at everything and try to budget realistically and try to save realistically. And I mean, that's where the quandary is now that I'm in, because saving to be able to get to the next step, be able to achieve the next thing, because I have to achieve something to be, feeling like I have a purpose, feel like that I'm progressing. And when I can't, it kills me. Being stagnated, it isn't a good thing. But if you strive and you try to achieve, it's good. It's really, really good. The self-esteem goes up. You find a purpose. It's the world is so small when you have things in your way. So I don't know. I'm trying to be who I can be and find a purpose that would be satisfying and would maybe make a difference. But I personally, it's just been such a long road that you get tired. So it's a matter of resetting and assessing and figuring out what else you can do. So, till next time.